Next up is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Toomey. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Next up, recognitions and presentations. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, we'd like to invite up Jill Luke with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and they will present Center Grove schools with a distinction, District of Distinction Award. Jill, are you here? Yeah. Oh, great, there you are. Okay, sorry.
Well, good evening. I am Jill Luke. I'm the campaign manager for Student Series at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I'm here tonight with Gary Webb, who is an LLS board member and a familiar face in the Center Grove community, as Gary's father, Lee Webb, was actually the superintendent here in the 70s and the 80s, as I learned today. We were also supposed to be joined by Center Grove Elementary student Audrey Wampler tonight. Audrey, as some of you may know, is an honored hero for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and but she had a fever this morning and was unable to join us. If you know Audrey, to know her is to love her, and we wish that she was here with us tonight so you could see her adorable face. But Gary's gonna just talk to you for a minute.
Yeah, I actually have a type of chronic leukemia, and I'm very fortunate it affects my life, but I'm still kicking. But anyway, what I'm hoping is right now there's no cure for the type of leukemia I have, which is called chronic lymphocytic leukemia. But LLS is raising money and obviously new treatments all the time, and I think Jill mentioned Audrey. Audrey, I'm sure, benefited from some of the treatments that have come out in the last few years, and I'm hoping with more money raised for research that eventually there'll be a cure for the type of leukemia that I have. And in that regard, the Center Grove schools have just been tremendous. An example, I think, statewide of what a school system can do when the teachers and the principals get behind something like this. So I want to thank you personally and on behalf of Audrey and really everybody else who's suffering from blood cancers. We really appreciate the Center Grove school system being involved in this fundraising project that Jill works with the schools with. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So, as you may or may not know, Pennies for Patients is a science-based philanthropy program for grades K through 12. But to us, it's much more than that. It's how we raised over $28 million nationwide last year to fund life-saving research and patient services and programs. And it's also how we connect to local students, administrators, volunteers, and students. And for that, we are so grateful, which, as Gary said, brings us to the reason that we're here tonight. At this time, kind of going into Thanksgiving, we just wanted to say thank you for the amazing participation and commitment from Center Grove Community School Corporation. For many, many years, the corporation has participated at 90 or 100% with your schools involved. And you, over the span of time since Pennies has partnered with Center Grove, have raised an astounding $125,334.80. And I wish I had an hour to tell you about the difference that amount makes, but I don't panic. So since I don't have an hour to tell you that, please accept our sincerest thank you. And we're pleased to be able to present you with this District of Distinction Award. Thank you so much for being a committed partner to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and for Pennies for Patients. We are so, so grateful for you. Thank you.
Jill, thank you.
Thank you. We sure appreciate it.
There is a little, there's a little wrapper box for it here, so.
I got this right here, man. All right. Next up, reports. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, we're going to receive a report on graduation pathways work that's happening, and I would like to invite Mrs. Jennifer Perkins, Assistant Principal, and Connie Poston, Guidance Counselor from Center Grove High School, to come up and share with us the great work that they're doing.
Thank you. You want me to start? Good evening, I'm Jen Perkins, and this is Connie Poston. And first of all, we appreciate your time in letting us present some graduation changes that are coming. And we also would like to thank the Teaching and Learning Department and our own administration, who has been supportive in allowing us to be flexible in meeting the graduation needs of our seniors and our current students. The graduation requirements are changing with the class of 2023. And the Indiana Department of Education is allowing our current seniors and current students to opt into this new graduation pathway. And one of the biggest changes that is coming for students is that students will now have to complete 3 what we lovingly call buckets in order to graduate.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is I-STEP will be no more. So we've got some students that are kind of really excited about that already. I'm going to go through what students are going to have to do in order to graduate. And again, this is starting with our class of 2023. So that's our current 8th graders. Not only will students have to receive their high school diploma, so I'm talking their core 40 academic honors, technical honors that you might be familiar with now, there's 40 credits. They also have to demonstrate employability skills, and they also have to demonstrate post-secondary ready competencies. And I'll go into what those are here in a second. So our current high school students can graduate now using the current requirements or these new graduation pathways. So right now we're kind of operating under an either or, depending on what's best for the student. So as an example, just kind of a flow chart, did the student pass I-STEP? If yes, will they obtain their credits? Do they pass I-STEP? Then they get their diploma. But if you look at the other side, no, a student doesn't pass I-STEP. Does it make sense for them to move to a pathway? And if it does, then we're looking at moving them to the pathway and completing those buckets. So bucket 1 looks at, will the student obtain academic honors, core 40, or a general diploma? And if they do those things, and also bucket 2, which can be project-based learning, service-based learning, or work-based learning. And also bucket 3, which contains getting an honors diploma, certain cut scores on ACT, SAT, or the ASVAB, state certification, state apprenticeship, if they're a CTE concentrator, or 3 AP or dual credit classes. If they do all of those things, our current students will not have to pass I-STEP, and they can still graduate with a diploma. The waivers for those things look a little bit different. If a student is getting an academic honors diploma and they end up not getting it at the last minute, there are waivers in place, one of which being that the student has attempted 3 different things in that bucket 3. So we're going to encourage our students to take multiple AP classes if they're academic honors diploma bound, have them take the SAT, ACT multiple times, and we've got some other things in place that we're going to talk about in a second as well. So going into the buckets a little bit more, bucket 2 is the employability skills. So our students are either going to have to do a project-based learning experience. We have a few classes already embedded at the high school, such as our Project Lead the Way classes, computer science, our HTML class. The project-based learning experience has to contain something where they are presenting a solution to a problem to the community. And those classes are already embedded. Or a student can do service-based learning. So if they're volunteering on a regular basis, if they're participating in some of our courses like peer tutoring, peer mentoring, and those sorts of things. Or work-based learning. So next year we will have a work-based learning class where students can go out and work in the community, receive credit for that, and that would fulfill that. Also the governor's work ethics certificate. We have, I believe, 55 students currently signed up to receive that work ethics certificate. C9 is a great example. Students can get work-based learning that way as well. So again, they have to do one of these things. And then they also have to do one thing in bucket 3. So bucket 3 is a little bit more data-based. So a student's earning a technical or academic honors diploma. They're earning a certain qualifying score on tests such as the SAT, ACT, ASVAB. Or they're earning an industry certification, taking 3 AP or dual credit with a C- or higher, and becoming a CTE concentrator. There are certain pathways that the state has outlined that count as CTE pathway courses. To be a concentrator, a student has to take 6 credits. So they would, again, have to do one thing in this bucket 3 as well. So as we're moving forward, and we're already in the midst of scheduling for next year at the high school, if you can believe that, but we are being very purposeful with our students, especially our 8th graders that we're going to start meeting with in January. We want to be very purposeful with them to make sure that when we're scheduling their classes, we're doing what's best for them and looking at, are they going to be an AP honors route? Do we need to look at CTE pathways and making sure that whatever their future plans are relate to how they're graduating at the high school?
So we're doing a couple things to try and encourage students. We did SAT during the school day for 57 seniors to try and get them that opportunity during the school day, which is something we've never done before, and we tried, and it was really successful. On the same day, Connie helped me plan ASVAB, and one of the ways that you can complete bucket 3 is getting a 31 or better on the ASVAB. The great thing about the ASVAB is it completes bucket 3, but it also gives you career information about what you might be interested in. We had 37, is that right? 37 students get above a 31 or higher on the ASVAB. We also are hosting C9 Lunch and Learns, where we're trying to get students who think they may have an interest in C9, having them come in during lunch and talk to them about the different programs. And then once we did the C9 Lunch and Learn, then they also were given a permission slip to go out to C9. We also participated in a C9 boot camp because we think we have an understanding of what's going on as educators at C9, but it was really nice to actually have the kids take us around and show us what they're passionate about and what they're doing it, in their C9 programs.
And I think we have a big population of students that C9 is going to be really important for. Students can double dip in the bucket. So when I say double dip, I mean if they're at C9, that counts as their CTE concentrator for bucket 3. It also counts as their bucket 2 for work-based learning. So if a student's going to C9, they've got bucket 2, bucket 3 checked off. As long as they get their diploma at the high school, they're in really, really good shape. So when we're meeting with parents, again, in January, we're going to meet with our parents and really communicate to them, these are the paths we need to start looking at. Your student needs to be very purposeful when they're choosing their classes, and we'll make sure, as we're meeting with them, the counselors are going to ensure that they are on track to graduate, and we're going to have to make sure that they are selecting things, meeting bucket 2, meeting bucket 3, and also getting their credits.
Are there any questions that we can answer for anyone?
I guess just, some of this is a result of legislation that was passed, was it in July that became effective July 1st of this year?
Yes, correct.
So nice work in a short time frame.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And it's a good option for kids.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Perfect. Next up, Eca Athletic Handbooks, Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, I'd like to invite Mr. Henderson, high school principal, up to the podium to discuss with the board the Eca Athletic Handbooks that have been recently worked on and developed, and he's going to share a little bit about the process taken to do that.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and share with you a little bit of information and updates on the status of the development of athletic and ECA handbooks. You'll recall that we've been working on this for quite some time, relied very heavily on Mr. Zwitt to assist me in the process of putting together an athletic handbook, and then we worked from that along with UTAG leadership and building level representatives to review that in building level discussion and take looks at all the language there. We've spent considerable amount of time reviewing that, revising that, and We're at the point now where we're ready to publish those. As you're aware, just like any handbook that we develop, it's a living, breathing document. We regularly review those as we encounter situations and issues that we would reference in the handbook. If we come up with concerns or areas that we need to revise, we always go back to the drawing board and add to those and refine language there. So we've taken a pretty extensive look at those things. We've sought feedback from the association, and we're at the point where we're ready to distribute those to our coaches and our ECA sponsors, as well as put together a student bill of rights, so students understand what their opportunities are and what their rights are with regard to their participation in those types of events.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I'm sure we might have a few questions. One idea, you may have said it, was we took the process, we took this through. Could you kind of say that again really quickly?
Yeah, so we put together a draft, and we took that draft to our Teachers Association leadership and our building level discussion. Since this is specifically designed for the high school, for high school coaches and high school ECA sponsors, it was a building level discussion issue, so the leadership there helped us review those documents, ensure that we weren't missing anything, helped us refine language, and so then we've gone back, refined the language, gone back and shared that with association representatives as well. We've also sent it out to ECA sponsors and head coaches, and we're ready to move forward with implementation.
So as I read through it, the one thing I noticed, we actually identify up towards the table of contents, like who the sponsor currently is.
Correct.
I'm gonna look at Mrs. Hoover. Is there a process in place to make sure that gets updated when changes get made to who the ECA sponsors are?
We'll make the document available online, so anyone can access it at any time. And of course, when that can be part of the hiring process, we can, just like we do when we run them through HR, we can make sure they know where that's at.
And if we have changes in coaches, because it's published electronically, it's a fairly simple fix.
I just want to make sure we had a process, guys, because it seems like every month when we approve the personnel report, there's always changes in ECA assignments, or somebody drops one, picks one up, and, I just want to make sure we have a process in place to make sure we're identifying the correct person for that, since this will be published online. And then my second question is, this is for the high school. What are we doing to push something out to the middle schools and potentially the elementary schools?
Of course, they have their own process we want them to go through. I certainly think what the high school has done is very extensive, and it would be a great model, but they do some things that wouldn't apply at the other schools, overnight purposes. So I think working, having the building principals, athletic directors, who are the bargaining unit, part of the union, part of the teachers association, but at the middle school level.
I'm going to be sharing those documents with the middle school building principals and having a conversation with them and sharing with them what we're implementing at the high school. And then they'll take that back to their own buildings and have conversations about what components of that they would want to include in a middle level handbook, so, if they want to pull directly from that. There's some differences because of IHSAA rules that
Right.
pertain to high school students that don't necessarily pertain to middle school students. So there's some changes in there that it wouldn't be appropriate to just plop that on a middle school. There are some things
Right.
that wouldn't
My-
necessarily.
It
my-
also goes against discussion, which they have a right to have.
My overarching concern is that we are sharing this across the organization, and we are thinking larger than the high school, because some of the things we wanted to address could occur at a middle school or at the elementary school level as well,
And when we were done,
ongoing.
So, sorry, the question was, do we update it every year? And it's ongoing updating, but we probably will look at it once a year at the least.
and we would want each level to be appropriated. All elementaries follow the same, middle schools, and then the high school, so they could
Yep,
match
okay.
those.
Have you found in going to the different groups and putting this together, have you found pretty good buy-in, that people think this is a good process, a good way to kind of bring this about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what the handbook does is it brings together a lot of practices that have been in existence in our building and puts them all in one place. An easy to reference document for all of our coaches and all of our ECA sponsors. If they need information, it's one easy place to go and find that, as opposed to lots of separate documents that maybe weren't all collective in a handbook format.
I think it was long overdue, so I appreciate your efforts in putting this together. And I also applaud the effort of not only having one for athletics, but having one for all ECAs. So not only are we talking about our athletic department, but we're talking about our band, our choir, our robotics, and what have you. So I think it's important that this handbook really applies to students that are doing extracurriculars, which we want them to do to help grow the children. Now, with that being said, what time frame are you looking at to present it for approval? I mean, or do you still have to go back and have more meetings, or are we going to be seeing it in the next few months?
It's in final format, and that
And so-
approval process would be,
Yeah, and this particular handbook does not require board approval, so we can implement this immediately. We wanted to just get, I think that the coach's input is the last piece.
and it's been distributed to head coaches, it's been distributed to ECA sponsors, so we're ready to go. It's ready to be published as of tomorrow. Now, really, I just got out of the way, quite honestly. The heavy lifting was really done by Mr. Zwitt and members of the association, and I just kind of facilitated things, so,
Way to get out of the way.
yes.
This'll be, they will sign this every year like we do all the other, like the employee handbooks.
Yeah, we can have a sign-off process for our coaches, indicating that they've received a copy of that handbook, and they're going to abide by it.
And I appreciate your humility, but we all know better than you got out of the way. We know you had a lot of work putting this together. In all due honesty.
Really good people surrounding me, that's the secret.
That's what makes the team work.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Yep, thank you.
All right, next up, the consent items. Dr. Arkanoff. I'm sorry.
That's why she is.
That's why Pam keeps me in line. Public comments this evening. Mr. Poor would like to speak about item 8.5, the 1028 hearing on the high school project. Mr. Poor, just as a reminder, you have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you for that allotted time. I'm so glad to see so many people here. If you don't know what 1028 is, please stick around. They're going to tell you a little bit more about this. But first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Grable, Dr. Agranoff, Mr. Henderson, for taking me through the school, showing me what needed to be done, and Mrs. Tooney, excuse me, was with us. But anyhow, I haven't anything negative to say. I think everything I saw, the proposal shows merit. We need to do some modifications, remodeling, and everything. I think we have got to look at what they want to do as far as size-wise in this project. So I'm hoping that the school board will, when they get the final plans, really detail these things, because some of the rooms right now I was taken through have got 35 desks in there. They hold 28 to 35 students, and they're a third of the size of this room. So now, what are we going to do for growth if you put 5 more students in there? They won't hold it. So we have some decisions that need to be made that are not going to, that have to be looked into this plan. So I want to bring it to the board's attention. If you're not, that you really got to detail this out very good. So that's about all I have to say about it. I'm for the plan, and I won't be the one going down and start the remonstrance. And, but please, take a look at this very well. And don't look at that $45 million that we're going to spend. Look at the grand total. In 20 years, we're going to spend almost $80 million with interest. So take a look at that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poor.
All right, now, next up, consent item. Sorry, Mr. Poor, I wasn't trying to skip the public comments there. Pam keeps me in line. Consent items, Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, I'm recommending the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as reported.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Any questions or discussion about the consent agenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is action items. Approve new course proposals for the high school. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve new high school course proposals, and I'll ask Dr. Parker, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, to share with you some additional information.
Thank you. Each year, the high school makes course proposals of possible courses available to students for scheduling. This year, the high school would like to add 13 course descriptions for potential courses to the academic guide. A decision on whether to offer these will be determined at a later date by the high school based on staffing and student choice, as well as instructor availability. These courses match the course descriptions approved by the Indiana Department of Education for high school course offerings. And I would like to invite Mr. Henderson to help answer any questions, since we're fortunate to have him here tonight.
Mr. Henderson, if you could just give us a brief description of the process that you go through in order to get to this proposal, to tell us that, in essence, this is what we think needs to be added new, depending on staffing and availability.
Sure, absolutely. So every year we take a look at the needs of our students as diploma types change, as graduation requirements change. You just heard a description about grad pathways and what's happening as we have incoming 8th graders this next year, what's going to be different for them. So we try to anticipate what the needs are going to be to fulfill all of those requirements for kids, take a look at our existing course offerings. Oftentimes, we will also find that we are able to offer additional dual credit courses because of certification or memorandums of understanding with post-secondary institutions, and we're able to put courses in our books that give our students greater advantage. One of those in particular, if you take a look at industrial automation and robotics, we have a phenomenal robotics club and team, and they compete. One of the things that we are lacking is application of those robotic skills to industry readiness standards. And so we are proposing a course that would involve implementation of 3 FANUC robotic arms in our engineering and technology program. That does a couple of things for us. We already have
Is there any
students.
chance I can enroll in that class, or am I too old?
I could probably get you some special training.
Okay, I apologize to interrupt you, but it just sounds really cool.
Yeah, so ultimately what these are 3 industry standard robotic arms that would afford our students who take those courses the opportunity to be CTE completers or also earn 4 industry certifications. So it serves kind of dual purpose in filling some of the buckets that are available for kids, or that kids are going to be required to fill as they matriculate through the system. So every year we put out a reminder to department chairs to review their courses in the curriculum guide and to make any new course proposals. We meet with department chairs over the course of 2 consecutive meetings. We present those. So it's a little bit like a 1028 hearing process where there's kind of 2 readings of that before we then approve them at the building level, and then we send them on over to the curriculum department or the teaching and learning department and Dr. Parker, ultimately for presentation to you. As he mentioned, just because we offer a course in our curriculum guide doesn't necessarily mean that course will run. We have to have expressed student interest to indicate that there would be enough kids wanting to take the class. We have to have instructor availability to make that happen too. So just by putting them on the books doesn't necessarily mean we're going to teach them every year, but by getting them on the books and getting them approved, it affords us the opportunity to at least see on an annual basis if there's student interest in taking the course, and then we can make a decision about what we offer based on student signups any given year.
One of them on here I see is workplace Spanish. How is that different from just the Spanish 1, 2, 3? And
Mrs. Perkins happens to be here, and Mrs. Perkins is the assistant principal, You see how the stuff kind of rolls downhill at times. Mrs. Perkins is the assistant principal who actually works directly with the World Language Department. So she can probably come up here and bail me out a little bit because she's had more direct conversation about this than I have.
So work-based Spanish or workplace Spanish is for someone who is thinking about maybe going into a field where they'll need Spanish. Doesn't count for the academic honors diploma, but let's say you really enjoyed Spanish 1, 2, 3. Maybe AP isn't the next thing you want to do, but you are thinking about, hey, I may need this when I go into teaching or when I go into nursing. It gives you the ability to use those conversational skills that you would need in a workplace. Less academic, more focused on the speaking and listening skills.
Thank you. Awesome. Pretty good considering you didn't know that question was going to be asked.
It's okay.
That is helpful. So I just like to say something real quick. When I got on the board 6 years ago, there was a meeting we had with a bunch of parents, and they said, they go, we're really concerned that Center Grove has plateaued. And that, I was like, what the heck are they talking about? I mean, I really didn't know because I was new on the board. I thought it seemed pretty good. But in my 6 years, this is one of the favorite things that we do as a board is this, because this shows thinking, growth, just like what Mrs. Perkins was talking about, this workplace Spanish. That's something great. That's outside the box. That's something that gives our children some skill they can actually use. Who cares if it goes for an academic diploma? It's something they can actually use. And they can actually do something with what their chosen career, like I think you said nursing or teaching, right, Jen? And what I would encourage you all to do is to continue thinking outside the box. Think of new ways to reach the kids. It's exciting. It could be anything from you use current, some cool thing from there. It could be Marvel superheroes and fiction and how that relates to the English literature, something like that. That's outside the box. I encourage you to keep doing that because this type of thing, all the classes that we've approved over the time I've been on board are. I agree with Rob. I'd like to take some of these myself, But I also am really excited to see a lot of the robotics and all the stuff that goes towards CTE, some of those as well. That's what's so important that we focus on that as well. So that's really my point. I'm glad that we've expanded a lot. It's been exciting to see, but I really want to encourage you guys to really think outside the box. I think you're going to get more kids interested and engaged in the education process instead of just like, it's just English, it's just math. It's something that how can connect to them in a way that's meaningful. So great job.
I concur with that.
I'm really excited that you said that. That's awesome. And that's on the record.
The only thing I would add is
She didn't
reading
agree
through
with
all
me, but
this,
she agreed with you.
is make sure we have good description of what is prerequisites needed. I know it happens more at college level than probably high school, but it would be horrible for a kid to get into this and go, oh, wait a minute, you can't take this. So prerequisites have to be really spelled out.
I'm not sure you should take the cybersecurity course they're offering, but. The one thing that excites me, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Parker, but this might be the most. There seems to be a lot here. I don't ever remember seeing 13 courses across.
We may have a few more than usual, but we typically have more than a handful.
Do we?
Closer to
Good.
2 handfuls or more every
Okay.
year.
What's
I like the spread.
What's the time frame on getting from start to finish? Does it take 2 years for this to happen, or
Oh,
just
no.
depends on the staff?
No, in terms of, I guess,
Somebody has the
clarify
idea.
the question.
Somebody has the
idea? It'll vary. Sometimes the idea comes to them post-approval process. So let's say somebody thinks of something between this approval and next school year. It's going to be the following year before that gets implemented. So it would be, it would be 2 school years from now before that would be an option. We would then say, bring that during the time frame that we do new course proposals next year. We only do it once a year. Lots of things have to happen in terms of publishing curriculum guides, creating sign-up sheets for kids, getting course requests entered, getting the master schedule developed, those kinds of things. But right now, what we're talking about, everything that you see right here would be on the books for next school year, which means students would be signing up for them right now.
All right, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the new high school course descriptions as presented for inclusion in the high school academic guide.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Toomey. Any further questions or discussion, or are we good? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Next up, adopt the 2018-2019 board finance goal. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, I'm recommending that the board adopt the 2018-2019 board finance goal, and I'll ask Dr. Gabriel, Chief Financial Officer, to provide us with some additional information.
Yes, the board materials include excerpts from a 2007 law, which requires the board to pass this goal, and I've highlighted 4 points in there in that material. First of all, the state's established 4 different categories for school expenditures. The first 2 categories are considered to be direct student instruction, or what we call classroom instruction or classroom expenses. Each district must report annually on their annual performance report various categories, various data about these expenditures, and of course we have done that every year in the format that the state expects. And then every year the school district has to establish a goal. The law says that will increase the corporation's allocation of resources to student instruction and learning in light of the unique circumstances in that school district. And the 4th point is that the state will recognize and reward school corporations that meet these goals. That's in the law. The state's never done that, to my knowledge. And those of my colleagues that we've talked about this, we report these goals to the state and nothing ever happens of any kind. Nobody ever looks at them or does anything with them. But it still says that we shall establish a goal. The data about these 4 categories is provided to us by the state, and the last year which they have provided us data for is 2015-16. So right now they're 2 years behind in actually telling us how we're doing with respect to these categories. It's also important to keep in mind that capital expenditures fall into the overhead category, and that makes it very difficult to increase instructional expenses if you are selling bonds. And as I like to say, even building a classroom is not considered to be a classroom expense. It's considered overhead. So generally, growing school districts that need to build classrooms and pay for them with bonds are going to appear less than the state average because of that. As a result of that issue over capital expenditures, the states developed another measure which they refer to as operational expenditures spent on classroom instruction. And this chart shows you how Center Grove is doing in that regard. And as you can see, every year, our amount spent on instruction is slightly higher than the statewide total average. So what we're recommending is that, this evening, is that the state establish a goal that mirrors the language that's in the law, which would say, for the 2018-19 school year, the Center Grove School Corporation will strive to increase the school corporation's allocation of taxpayer resources directly to student instruction and learning in light of the unique circumstances in the district. So we are requesting the board to approve that this evening.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion?
I move that we adopt the board finance goal as stated on the overhead projection without reading the entire thing.
Thank you.
Nobody wanted to read.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Do I have a second?
I will second that. The not reading part.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Are there any questions or discussions for Dr. Gabriel? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
I'm also opposed just because you didn't read the goal. All right. Next up, authorize 2019 tax anticipation warrants. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve the resolution to borrow money from the Indiana Bond Bank, and Dr. Gabriel will provide you with some additional information.
Yes, again, this is an item which we do every year, have done it every year that I've been here for the last 12. And that is, we'll be participating in the Indiana Bond Bank funding program for the issuance of temporary loans in anticipation of tax revenues. Since property taxes are normally distributed to us in June and December, we have cash flow deficits that are typically in the months before that, in April and May, and October and November. So for 2019, we anticipate the need to borrow in our operations fund $4,316,990. And then this amount is paid back when our property tax revenues are received. In the past, we've borrowed specifically for the capital projects fund, for the transportation fund, and for the bus replacement fund. But for next year, in 2019, those have all been rolled together into the operations fund. And just for comparison purposes, in 2018, we borrowed $3.7 million, and the interest rate on that was 2.07%. We expect, unfortunately, interest rate is probably going to be a little bit higher this year. A resolution has been prepared for the board by Bose, McKinney, and Evans, and they are the bond counsel for the Indiana Bond Bank. The resolution actually sets the maximum amount that can be borrowed for each fund, which is the total property tax levy, but we would anticipate that the actual amount we'd borrow is what's specified at $4.3 million. The documents that we're using are in the same format that they have been in prior years, and the complete set of documents is rather lengthy, around 80 or 90 pages, and that's been provided to board members for them to look at. So at this time, board action is needed to approve the resolution and to authorize the president and the secretary to sign and execute these documents.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution authorizing tax anticipation warrants and authorize the president and secretary to sign documents as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Any questions or discussion for Dr. Gabriel? All right, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Next up, additional appropriations hearing and resolution. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. So this evening, is a hearing for an additional appropriations, and I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Alexander, to run the hearing.
Sorry. Got it. I now open this public hearing. I would like to call on Dr. Gabriel to provide some additional information about these appropriations. He will make a brief presentation.
Yes, this evening's been advertised as the appropriate time to have a hearing on this additional appropriation. And this is because in October, we received $187,988 for sale of the land at Middle School North to the White River Township Fire Department. That money was deposited into the rainy day fund. So it's been received and put in the bank. But before we can spend it, we have to do an additional appropriation, and that requires this hearing. So this shows what that money, what our intention is to spend that money on, and that is that we'll spend $151,000 be appropriated for the purchase of land, and this is to buy the house that we just recently purchased at 2977 South Morgantown Road. That is the property adjacent to the clinic, immediately to the south of the clinic. And then there'll also be the balance, $36,988 will be appropriated for the purchase of a police vehicle for our new officer, and also to purchase a used pickup truck that we're buying from the White River Township Fire Department that will be used by our transportation mechanics. So there is a resolution attached that the board needs to approve, and I just have to mention that there was a typo on the original resolution. Mrs. Parker, did you get that corrected in what they're looking at now? Okay, so that was corrected at the very last minute. So with those comments, I'd turn the hearing back over to Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. This would be the appropriate time for members of the public to comment on the additional appropriations or the information presented this evening. Are there members of the public present who would like to comment? Seeing none, I now close this public hearing. Are there any board members who have comments or questions?
Yes, I would just like to ask, how many police officers do we have at this time?
We now have 5. This would be the 5th.
Thank you.
Yeah, not including the dogs.
I would like to comment. I guess I would like to commend the fire department and then specifically also from our board, Mr. Alexander, for working together to find a creative use for property to put the new fire station that's being lost as a result of the expansion of I-69. And then I'd like to commend the administration for giving us a good use for those funds. In essence, we got a land swap on land that's closer to our facility here that we'll be able to use, and then also put it to good use for the police car and the truck for the fire department. So I think this is governments, both the school and the fire department are working together, and then the school finding, I think, a good use for those funds. So I want to commend everybody that was leading the charge.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Any other comments from the board? Do I have a motion?
I salute.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the resolution for an additional appropriation in the rainy day fund.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0. Chief Pell?
Thank you.
Would you please thank your board on behalf of the school board for working with us, and to you and Mr. Hoffman for your continued partnership. I thank you and look forward to maybe some more projects ahead. All right, next up, I believe this is why we have a packed house tonight, would be my guess. And then we saved it for the end. So, 1028 preliminary determination hearing and resolution for the high school project. That was a mouthful. Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. This evening, I'm recommending that the board approve the 1028 preliminary determination resolution for the high school expansion and renovation. And this evening is a hearing prior to selling the bonds to finance the high school renovation and expansion project. And I will turn it over to you, Mr. Alexander, to run this hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Arkanoff. I now open this public hearing. I would like to call on Dr. Arkanoff to introduce a presentation about the project, the financing of the project, and the actions we are taking this evening.
Great, thank you very much.
Floor is yours.
I will start us off this evening. So I have a very simple job. I'm going to ask Mr. Henderson to come up to the podium to start us off.
So, Mr. Henderson, who are you going to ask?
Eventually, Dr. Long, followed by Dr. Gabriel, followed by Dr. Arkanoff. So there's a little preview for you. There we go. So as previously mentioned, this is a second opportunity for us to appear before the board and speak to you about the needs of the high school and this high school renovation project. So I want to start off by talking about how needs were identified for this project. Our architects, Lancer and plus Beebe, spent countless hours meeting with departmental groups, parent groups, various staffing organizations like our cafeteria staff, our custodial staff, our maintenance staff, the administration, and again, parent groups as well, both music groups, athletic groups, PTO groups, to really talk to all of those groups, and met with most of them at least twice, and some of them multiple times, to kind of refine what the needs were as we were looking at growth in the district and really bringing our spaces up to current level of our learning space expectations. So after they met with these folks, they categorized the needs into 4 broad areas. The first was health and safety. The second was stewardship, as we mentioned, upgrading facilities to our current learning space and programming standards, bringing spaces that haven't been touched for well over 20 years up to today's expectations for classrooms. Preparing for academic growth and program growth within the district as enrollment increases, as well as making the necessary facility improvements to prepare us for that growth. We talked last time about the growth in the district, and as we mentioned, there are currently 1,719 new homes being built in White River Township. So you can quickly do some math and see that children are coming, and we need to be ready for them. So most of the development has been in the southern half of White River Township, and as you all know, we have a new elementary slated to open in August of 2019 in anticipation of that. We don't yet know who will move into those houses and whether they'll all be elementary age kids or whether they'll all be middle school age kids or whether they'll all be high school age kids. We anticipate that there'll be a mix. So we're going to see growth all across the district, and we need to be prepared for that. When we looked at the renovations, we really kind of divided those things into 4 major areas of improving safety, adding features that will allow us to shut down certain areas of the building when we have evening activities or special events so that teachers can work in their classrooms and not have folks that are there for a basketball game or a choir performance or any other activity that we have wandering up and down the hallways when they're in their rooms grading papers and planning lessons and doing those kinds of things. Improving learning spaces, as we mentioned, there are classrooms, and you'll see some pictures in a couple of minutes, where carpet, cabinetry, furniture, storage, all of those things are very outdated. Rooms are pretty cramped. Furniture isn't really easily reconfigurable to allow group activities, and kind of the change in the way learning is delivered nowadays. The sit and get in rows really isn't what's practiced in classrooms today, so having flexibility in furniture is a big need. Upgrading our existing pool and relocating it, expanding it from 25 meters to 50 meters, adding a zero depth entry pool for special needs students for physical therapy, injured athletes for physical therapy, creating with a 50-meter pool from moving from the ability of having 8 25-meter lanes for practices, which causes practices to run late into the evening. And there's a period of time during the year where we're unable to offer learn to swim lessons because the pool is so busy with our swim team programs that we lose a significant portion of the time. And that's one of the commitments that we made years ago, was to try to ensure that there were learn to swim programs available in the community, just for water safety, just to protect our students and our young children in our community. Relocating the pool and reclaiming that space and turning that into a 2-level classroom area, and also relocating the wrestling room to that area, getting it closer to the rest of our athletic facilities that we use on a regular basis. Then reclaiming the classrooms that would be moved into that reclaimed pool space will get us 11 additional classrooms. So when you stop and think about that, if you have 11 additional classrooms and each one of those classrooms is occupied by 30 students, that gives us an additional student capacity right off the bat of 330 more kids that we can handle. So there's some benefits there. And this project is done with extreme stewardship in mind. It creates a level or steady tax rate. And in fact, we'll see some slides a little bit later that will show that the tax rate really will be less than it was 10 years ago, even with our ability to meet these needs. So some of the added safety features, and I think we've mentioned this in board meetings before, some of these things we'll talk about quite openly. Some of these things we will not talk about quite openly because they're safety features, and we don't want to make those widely known. But we would do things like install additional barriers, as I already mentioned, to restrict traffic in certain areas of the building, add additional video surveillance capabilities in our building, enhance our communication systems, arm doors so that they are alarmed, so that if a door is propped open somewhere, it would alert our school safety officers that that door is propped open, and we can take action to go close that door and make sure that that part of the facility remains secure. One-way security screening, which is kind of one-way film on glass windows that allows individuals behind the glass to be able to see out, but individuals on the other side of the glass to not be able to see in. We would redesign some locker rooms to increase the ability of PE teachers to supervise in those spaces. The addition of a new pool would give us wider deck space and provide safer access for swimmers, instructors, and coaches. And it separates the pool spectator entrance. If you've ever been to the pool when there's a large event, Jingle Bell Classic is this weekend, be a perfect example if you want to come over and see how crowded the place gets. We currently have a situation where spectators and participants share the same walking space. They share the same deck. That means that deck gets slippery. We have slip and fall hazards for spectators who want to come in there. And just keeping spectators and participants separate also adds another layer of security and safety there as well. So you can see some existing classrooms, and in just a second you'll see some existing classrooms. Close your eyes and imagine.
What would you like them?
Right?
Yeah. Oh, I go back farther, remember?
All right. I could project it from my device if you need me to.
I can just tell you, some of these classrooms my sister went to in 1961, and they have not been updated since then. And I had the same classrooms.
Yeah. So there are a number of spaces in the building that haven't been touched for well over 20 years. They have the same paint, they have the same ceiling tiles, they have the same lights, they have the same old chalkboards, and many of those things are extremely outdated. So part of this renovation project would go in and update those facilities. We have teacher desks where legs are kind of balancing, propping a desk up, and you can actually pull the leg out and the desk will fall over. So there are many changes like that that would be seen. So I already mentioned our pool deck and how crowded that gets When Dr. Long comes up and shares some of the plans, you'll see how the new pool facility would have spectators on a separate level, on a second level above, and they would enter at the spectator level rather than the participant level.
Yeah, that's not part of this.
And I'll drive it.
I was gonna say, I've got it up too if you want. Switch to Apple TV, I just need a code.
You want to do it? Sure. Okay, you're on.
Technology's wonderful.
So slide number 8, Dr. Arkanoff, is where we were at with the classrooms. There you go. So in these photos, you can see lots of makeshift storage spaces that have just been kind of grabbed onto by teachers, and books and classroom supplies are all over the place. We've got desks that are really in disrepair. The chairs that you see there that students are seated in, the chair is attached to the desk, and they're not very big. They're not easy to move around. A 330-pound lineman doesn't fit in those very well. Having a separate desk, they're not really accessible for students that are in wheelchairs. They can't sit in those desks. But if we have portable tables that we can roll around and roll up to wheelchairs, whether a student is a regular user of a wheelchair or whether they're in a wheelchair due to a temporary injury, that flexible seating and the ability for teachers to regroup kids, put desks off to the side, put chairs in circles for Socratic seminars, and the way that we instruct today is very, very different from probably the way that I went to school, and perhaps the way many of you went to school, where you sit in straight rows and you listen to the teacher, and it's really not like that anymore. There's a lot of collaboration and time spent focusing on those kinds of skills. The next slide shows you an example of what the pool can look like when we have swim lessons. In this situation, we have 8 25-meter lanes. In the new pool space, it would be a 50-plus meter pool, 10 lanes wide, movable bulkhead, so we could put a bulkhead in the middle and effectively have 22 25-meter lanes across. Right now, swim practice takes up till 9:30 in the evening, and again, there's that period of the time in the year where we aren't able to offer those swim lessons just due to pool space. So those are the example photos. With that, I'm going to invite Dr. Long up to talk about the project overview and show you the spaces that would be touched.
Thank you. Just to kind of review, the next slide will show you in the kind of the pink area, the areas that we touched during the last renovation. Part of that was for safety and security. We moved the office area from the middle of the school out towards the front. You can see towards the left, that big pink rectangle on the left. That's where we moved the offices. We touched some of the science rooms on the north end of the building along the top of that picture there. We added the choir room there on the far right, that area, the big square on the right-hand side. The areas in blue on this map are areas that we anticipate being able to renovate. With the media center, or not the media center, the publications room that's been probably woefully adequate for the class, or how well the CGTV, what they can produce. We're also going to touch some of the science classrooms that we weren't able to touch the first time. Those are the ones that are in the middle of the building there. On the bottom right-hand side, the kind of the backward C, that's where our early college is, or some people call it the dungeon. I don't know if that's affectionately, of course. No windows, small rooms, it's dark. You go in there and teach, and by the end of the day, you go in when it's dark and you come out and it's still dark. So those would be some areas that we would touch as well. So next slide, please. On the main floor, you can see where the old pool is, where it says reclaim the pool space. what we would do would be build the new pool there on the bottom left-hand side in the pool, in the blue, then backfill the pool and develop classrooms in there. And then just to the top of that, there are classrooms, that's where the art classrooms are. We then renovate those classrooms, and so we add classrooms through there. Again, the pink is part of the areas that we've already touched. On the top of the map there, the classrooms are some of the English classrooms. Are they still English? And back in the old days when I was there. In the middle of that, the special ed, special services classrooms. And then down towards the pool are all the social studies that hallway. Those are probably some of the oldest, last untouched classrooms that we have down through there. Oh, I'm sorry, can you go back one more? Just the other part that we really need to touch, and it's really about safety, because it's about visibility and observation to make sure students are safe when they're in the locker rooms. But the other issue that we have is the lack of locker room space for our PE classes. We have kids changing clothes in different locker rooms, makes that supervision hard to keep an eye on them. The locker rooms are small. The visibility in them they're not good. We're going to redesign those so the supervision can be a lot better in there and create a safer environment in the locker rooms. So we touch those on both sides of the Vandermeer gym. In the part of the new pool area, I think we said there were 410 lockers in there. That will greatly help out by having all the PE classes all in one place, so when they change, they can go directly to the pool, to the student activity center, or to Vandermeer gym, or to the weight room, and it's all located right there. Next slide, please. On the upper level, as Mr. Henderson talked about, if you know the south parking lot there's kind of an elevation change from west to east. So the entry would be there at ground level, but it would also be in the observation deck or the spectator seating area. The pool then would be actually below the ground level. The rest of the classrooms, kind of down the middle there are math and foreign language. The big blue rectangle on the left-hand side is the old wrestling room that once we fumigated, we would recreate some classrooms in there. I used to coach wrestling, I can say that, it's all right. So if anybody's mad, so we'll make some classrooms out of that. Some of the business classrooms, we've changed what we do in business. You saw we're going to teach a cybersecurity classroom, and we haven't touched those classrooms for a long time. So we'll renovate the business, the math, foreign language, the wrestling room, and then add to the pool there. I think that was it for me. Oh, again, you've seen these. These are some of the classrooms. Oh, yeah, sorry. And then, so that was the old classroom. These are kind of the renderings of what the new classrooms would look like. You can see the lighting, the flexible seating. That's something that if you followed along when we started working on Walnut Grove, we decided we wanted to do new seating throughout all of our elementaries, and we've been piloting that. Mr. Taylor's been working on that, and we're selecting new furniture that allows for grouping and the flexibility to move students around, and it's not the old rows that were nailed into the floor back when I was in elementary school. So we want to have that flexibility, but we also realize that that's a necessary option to have, not just in the elementary schools, but also in the high school. The lighting in there for some of our classrooms that don't have outside light, we have tunable LED lighting, so it will adjust during the day to adjust with the outside lighting. It makes it more efficient, and it makes it easier for students to concentrate than the fluorescent lights as well. Now I think there's another example of some flexible seating and some bookshelves and everything. This is a great plan for our students and a great plan for our teachers. Dr. Gabriel?
So I'm going to talk very briefly about the funding on this project. This slide shows the overall estimates that we've made. Obviously, we're very early in this project, and Hunt Construction is the firm that does our estimates, and they prepare these estimates. We also work with our financial advisors to consider all the other miscellaneous costs. This establishes, and the bond resolutions establish $45 million as the maximum that we can spend, and that's what it will be. As we continue to refine this project, we will have to live within that limit. The next page shows some of the required information that's part of this hearing. You can see on the first line the $45 million, which is the maximum amount of the bonds. As Mr. Poor said, you can see the total interest cost is listed there. That's interest that we would pay in total over 20 years, $37 million. And I think what we want to emphasize is that the overall tax rate for this project, or the overall tax rate for the school corporation, will not increase as a result of this project. We have other bond issues and payments that are going to be decreasing over the 20-year life, so that this will not see an increase. We currently, for 2019, have a tax rate of very close to $1.02, and we would be able to maintain that with this project. Just a little bit about the process and how this works. In general, projects between 5 and 15 million are subject to a remonstrance, and that means that those that oppose the projects would collect a certain number of signatures, and then that would establish remonstrance period. And if during that remonstrance period, each side would have 30 days to collect signatures, and the side that collected the most signatures would win. A project such as this is over 15 million is subject to a referendum. In this situation, the opposition must collect a certain number of signatures, and then if that occurs, the project would be placed on an upcoming ballot, which in this case would be in May of 2019, and then it's a simple majority. The project passes or fails based on who gets the majority of the votes. In general, to describe this, we would say that if there's no referendum, the tax rate will remain flat, certainly at less than the $1.04, and I'll show you where we come up with that. And the project, we would begin the design in January and proceed as quickly as we could with this project. If there is a referendum on this project, that means that individual taxpayers' payments for this project would be above their tax cap, and those that were currently at the tax cap would pay slightly more. And the project would be delayed by about 6 months until after the May election. We like to show this slide. It's been presented every year as part of the budget presentation, but when we talk about maintaining a flat tax rate, this is what we're talking about. We're predicting a tax rate for next year of right at $1.02, maybe even a tiny bit less than that. So that just shows you what our history has been here. And then also, we like to present this slide, which shows you how we relate to the other districts in Johnson County. We're right in the middle of the pack. That's where we have been for a number of years. And in fact, people who've looked at data across the state, when you look at all the districts in the state, we're pretty much in the middle of the pack in terms of our tax rate for the state. So that's a summary of the financial information. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Arkanoff.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. Just to recap, obviously we believe this package to be best for students. Improving safety is one of the most important pieces that we do when we look at projects and increasing safety in our corporation. As was shared by Mr. Henderson, improving the learning spaces and upgrading the pool space. While that's not just a safety addition, and it is also helping to improve that program. And then adding additional classroom space and group space, not only in the existing pool space, but also in other areas in the school. We believe this to be the best for taxpayers, while this project can be achieved while not raising taxes, but maintaining the current tax rate. And as you saw from Dr. Gabriel's slide, the one that he likes the most, he has it framed in his office, is that we have a tax rate that is still lower than it was 10 years ago. So next steps for this is that it is 2 consecutive board meetings for the hearings. This is the second and final hearing for this. If there is no opposition, planning will begin immediately and we'll move the project forward, and the project will not increase the tax rate for White River Township residents. If it is opposed and becomes a referendum vote in May of 2019, the cost of the project will move above the tax cap and could impact people's taxes. And so with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Dr. Arkanoff. This is the appropriate time for members of the public to comment on the high school building project or the information presented this evening. Are there members of the public present who would like to comment? Chief Pell?
I would like to start out by sharing my gratitude in how well the school board and the school district is working with the fire department. I have been a firefighter for 29 years, and I started here in this community at White River Township Fire Department. So I've spent pretty much my entire adult life in the fire service and in this community, and spent some time in the Indianapolis Fire Department in Warren Township on the east side. But what I'd like to share with you is twofold. First of all, I've had the opportunity to participate in the Center Grove Ambassadors Program, and I was enthusiastic about doing it, but I really didn't realize how much I didn't know about the school district. So whomever's idea that was, it was absolutely brilliant. I have a very keen eye on the safety of the community and the challenges that we're facing right now in terms of safety in our society. And this Center Grove Ambassador Program has really opened my eyes to what the school has done and what they're planning for the future. So as a fire chief, I think this project is essential. It's going to get us further down the road. It's going to enable us to serve this community better, and it's going to enable the fire department to serve the schools and the children's better as well. As a father, same thing. I have one in high school, one in middle school, and I want them to come to a school like Center Grove. And as a partner in the community, this is how we should do community together. So like I said, I'm very, very grateful, and I think from a public safety perspective that this is the right move as someone that serves in the community and deals with tax rates and budgets and levies. This is very, very smart, measured growth that's going to increase the quality of life for the community and make all of our jobs a little easier and a little safer.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Thank you. Any other members of the public? Mr. Jones?
Good evening. I'm Rick Jones. I'm the head of the art department at the high school, and we would benefit by this by having our current location moved into the swim area as it is planned. And one of the things I want to talk about is just the fact that when we moved into our current rooms in 1996, everything was designed for a maximum of 24 students. So the rooms were small because that's what they thought, and we often have over 30 inside our rooms. So the rooms definitely need to be larger in that respect. Also, there wasn't much foresight in the concept that we were at a 6-period day when we planned this move. And as soon as we went to a 7-period and now an 8 periods available, the elective courses, which we are, have just greatly expanded. And as soon as we moved in, we were short 1 room. And currently, we have 7 rooms that we used. 5 of them are in the actual art department that was on the map there, but 2 of them are in other parts of the building. And that's just really inconvenient, having colleagues spread across the building. But one of the things I want to talk about is the safety aspect. When the current art department was designed, a ceramics room needs to be on ground level, and it needs to have outside access. And the incident that took place 2 years ago where there was a fire that wasn't a fire, it was a heat issue because the fact that the ventilation system stopped and the room started heating up. And it's enclosed. It's in the center part of the building, no windows, no doors. A good ceramics room should be on the main floor. It should have outside access so that the tons of clay that we get can be brought right into the room. But also, if we had that room like that at that time, our instructor could have just opened up the doors and the alarm never would have gone off, and we would have had school that day, and we would have had the parent conferences that night that had to get rescheduled. The teachers didn't mind that one bit, but the fact is that we were heroes for a day, but it really shouldn't have happened. And it goes back to the importance of good design and the need isn't just space, but it's also safety as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thanks, Rick.
Are there any other members of the community who would wish to speak? Is that Coach Todd?
Yep, I'm on picture. And I can probably talk without going to the mic.
Just
that-
talk lower.
Is this low enough? Hi, I'm Jim Todd. I'm a swim coach. I've been at Center Grove for 35 years. Been in the pool and swimming with it. And I love every minute of it. But I first and foremost, the most important thing is we teach all of the kids, not only in White River Township, but in the state of Indiana and throughout the United States, throughout the world, how to swim. Swimming is the only class that can prevent somebody from dying. And I take that every day. It's the most important thing, okay? I kid my classes every day when they come in, and I say, nobody ever died from not knowing how to diagram a sentence and or how to do an algebraic equation. Nobody ever died. Now, some of the engineers will tell me differently, I'm sure, but swimming to me is the most important. We are not allowed, we cannot have swimming lessons from October, the end of October, until March. That's a total disservice to this community. With this new facility, I hope and pray that we can teach every single kid before kindergarten how to swim. And on top of that, competitive swimming. Nobody, very, very, very few people make it to the Olympics, okay? Everybody that comes into the swim program thinks they're going to, but very, very few do. But every single kid that comes out of our competitive swimming program becomes a stronger swimmer. And as they become a stronger swimmer, they become a safer swimmer out. And you know this world is made of 75% water. And it's hard to get away from it. So with that being said, I believe that this facility not only is ingenious for the whole project, but it will also be one of the strongest things we've ever done for this community in keeping people safe and kids learning how to swim. To me, that's the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach Todd. Any other members of the public who wish to speak? Mr. Clark? Mr. Clarkson, sorry.
I just want to say that I'm really excited to see all the community come together and support this project. And it excites me because there's over 900 support staff that are involved. There's 8,500 students that it impacts. There's 17,000 parents and an endless number of community members that this is going to make a big difference in their lives. And I think it's exciting for us to finally, invest in our kids, our students, and our teachers, and also think about trusting our leadership and the tools that they need to succeed. I got a chance to do the ambassador tour around the school, and I can say that they've done a tremendous amount with what they have to make things great. But there's a lot of opportunity for an improvement, a lot of opportunity to make a difference in the kid's life. There's a lot of data out there saying that decor can help with safety and impact the positive influence. There's some kids that the school basically is their home. They don't have the things that a lot of people have. So they come here, they eat, they shower, they participate in over 60 extracurricular activities, and doing this project is going to impact all those kids. You know, I just looking at, we've got one pool, we've got a tremendous amount of kids in the athletic programs that get to utilize it for recovery, to help their muscles get better. We've got kids with autism that's going to impact. And just from the kids that are being competitive and trying to get the swim lessons, we have one high school, two teams, boys and girls. We have 2 middle schools that use the pool and 8 elementary schools that use the pool. So there's a tremendous amount of people that will be impacted by the pool. Right now, the pool deck is safe. They've reiterated it several times. There's not a lot of space. And, you know, just from the safety perspective of a lot of the kids that are out there and the parents, I think it makes a big impact. The reason why, you know, 50 meters makes a big impact too is because of the capacity. When you have so many kids in that pool, it impacts the air quality. And so when you test that water, normally it doesn't make a difference. But when you get hundreds of kids in that water and you're swimming around, you can't breathe. And the kids feel like they're drowning. And there's a lot of parents that wanted me to say that they have trouble with that. And they're excited that there's some, you know, moves in the right direction. The only other thing that I'd want to say is, from a financial responsibility standpoint, our interest rates are at the lowest they've ever been. The cost of materials are low, and they're only going to go up. So if we wait longer to do it, it's only going to cost us more in the future. And so I would just say, you know, I appreciate what the board's doing. I just want to thank them. Dr. Arkanoff, all his efforts to get the community involved. Mr. Poor for coming out and giving us some insight on his perspective. I think it's really important for us to come together as a community and support everybody that's involved. The only last thing I want to say is, you know, if we don't invest in our community, nobody else is. And we each have to take the onus on ourselves to be individual leaders and try to make a difference. And if we do that, we can make a tremendous amount of impact in a lot of kids and change away some of the direction of things that are going. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. Any other members of the public that wish to speak?
My name's Amy Wingler, and I'm the math department chair at the high school. And the crowded classroom that you saw was a math classroom. That was our honors pre-cal classroom. And the teacher that teaches that has 4 of those classes with over 30 kids in it, and very limited board space, very limited access to move around. And so this project, which is much needed, would help our kids in every way. You saw the slides of the new classrooms, and we talked about the desks that moved, but more importantly to me as a teacher, the whiteboard space around the room that we can get our kids to the board. We don't want them sitting day in and day out in their chairs. So they like to get up, move around, they like to apply what they're learning, and this project would really help that. Another thing that has happened quite often in the math department, I've been there for 23 years, and the desks, I've had 3 teachers tear their pants on the desks because they are very old, and students have actually scraped their legs on the desk. So just giving us the opportunity to have new and improved classrooms would be extremely helpful. The wear and tear that we put on, I have a family of 5 at home, that we put on our furniture is pretty great. And I have about 120 to 150 students in my classroom daily. And that wear and tear is just tremendous, as you can imagine. So thank you for considering this. It's only going to help students and our community, and the teachers are going to be extremely grateful for new desks.
Thank you, Mrs. Wingler.
Thanks, Amy.
Any other members of the public who wish to comment? Yep.
My name is Matt Watson. I'm a parent of a very small minority diving. The diving facility at Center Grove is lacking, and I hope with this new pool project that it can be brought up to today's standards. I have seen personally middle schoolers and high schoolers get injured while diving, and a lot of it is due to lack of equipment, especially safety equipment that is needed today. So I haven't heard anything about the diving with the new pool, but I hope it is addressed and some needed upgrades will be made to the pool and the diving facilities. So I look forward to hopefully seeing that in the future. And with my son and daughter, both have attended diving camps here locally in the state. We have USA Diving, which is located here in Indianapolis. There are plenty of resources available that I hope we do take advantage of for our pool. I think given what could be done, Center Grove could be an attractive location for diving competitions. AAU, USA Diving, they all hold competitions in Indianapolis, and I think it would be a great draw and way to highlight our community. So I hope that is taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment?
Hi, my name is Matt Mitchell. I have 3 kids in the swim program, 2 in high school and 1 in 8th grade. A lot of us here have kids in the high school program, and we've talked about a lot of the things that the kids have, and I'm kind of selfishly talking about swimming, but all the safety features, all the classroom needs, all the things that you guys have brought up are tremendous points. But one of the things that somebody talked about tonight was how late the kids were staying. And these kids, you know, my youngest son has to sit at that pool till after, you know, around 8 o'clock at night, every night. And by the time he gets home and gets some food in his belly, you know, it's time for him to go to bed. So he has very little time to do his homework. I myself also swim on the adult master swim team, and we can't even get in to use the pool till after they're done. So we're in the pool till, you know, almost 9 o'clock, and by the time we get dressed and changed, we're getting home at 9:30 at night. And for someone that has to get up at 4:30 in the morning every day, that's pretty tough and hard to do. But there's so many concerns that are being addressed by this project: the safety, the classroom needs. It just seems a no-brainer to me, and I really hope, you know, what we do. I joined the military when I was younger, so for the greater good. Not for myself, but so that I could serve something bigger than myself. And the purpose of us having our children is to provide them a better life for their greater good. And these are the needs that they have. And so I would just hope that you know, delaying this project or opposing this project, as we've heard, is going to possibly cost a lot of money with the tariffs on building materials and the things that are going to cost more in the future. I just think that this project should go ahead as planned, and I hope that those that are possibly in opposition would take that into consideration, the greater good for what is needed for our biggest asset in life, to those little kids that are going and affected by this the most. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public who wish to make a comment or speak? Lisa?
I too don't need a but I'll be good. I'll follow this. I'm Lisa Perrott, and I'm a proud parent of an 8th grader, soon to be a high schooler. A little scared about that, I'd gotta say. I'm also proud to be a member of the CG Ambassadors, and I also had a chance to take a tour. And I gotta tell you, there was 2 bipolar emotions that went through when we took this tour. One was utter despair, I gotta tell you, because I did call it the bowels and I did call it the dungeon. Those rooms, if you have not seen them as a parent, I was appalled that that's happening in Center Grove. I'm just gonna be frank. I've been a part of a lot of schools here, and just in the middle school, the elementary schools, you don't see that. So if you have not seen those rooms, seen what we're talking about, those pictures don't do enough, ask for a tour. If you have any questions, if you're at all thinking about opposing this, take a tour, see what we're talking about. This is real. This is a parent talking. This is a taxpayer, a parent, a business owner, and I'm saying from the bottom of my heart, I was in despair. I walked out of there saying, this cannot continue. We have to do something. Then the other part is you go upstairs to the renovation.
You go up there and we watched these open concept conference rooms. We watched classrooms, we watched groups. We saw kids working together in these little pod areas. And it was just totally electrifying. They were engaged, they were involved, they were stimulated. And I think we have to realize that is our future. These kids are our future. We're investing in our future, and this is the learning opportunity that we need to create for them. They will be our community of tomorrow, and we have to give them this foundation. There's just zero question. So if you are in any way opposed to this, I invite you to consider that these are very real challenges we have to overcome. These are not cosmetic. These are safety. These are pragmatic, and these are our children, and this is our future. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other members of the public who wish to speak? Okay. Seeing none, I now close this public hearing. Are there board members who have comments or questions?
Mr. President, I would, from the bottom of my heart, thank each and every one of you who are present